guess you weigh up the things that are important, and head and shoulders above everything else is family. Nothing really counts as much as family, whether the size of the house or the car or the bank account or whatever else. It all pales into insignificance compared to how important your family is to you. So I can recall, believe it or not, I can still recall starting school in Mount Isa at about age 5 or 6, I think it was. Dad was sent up to there in the army, and then eventually he got a house in the town, and we came up, Mum and I, and lived in Mount Isa, and I started school in Mount Isa, and I used to walk, I guess it was good over a mile from the house to school and back every day, most of the time barefoot. And all of the school buildings were galvanised iron, so they were a little bit on the warm side during the summer in Mount Isa. But that's the way it was, you know, got used to it. I can recall a few things from Mount Isa, but not a lot. I can recall we were very privileged in that we actually had a refrigerator in our house. And one of the times the refrigerator went bung, and Dad, about 4 of his mates from the army turned up and picked the refrigerator up and turned it upside down and sat it upside down for 10 minutes till all the gas regenerated itself, or whatever it was supposed to do in those days, and then tipped it back up the other way, and away it went again. So I can recall that. Well, that was quite an event in the house, you can imagine, and all these guys coming in and turning the big refrigerator upside down. I can remember things were rationed, like we used to have ration books, and you had so many coupons for some meat and so many coupons for a loaf of bread and various things like that. There was sort of a lot of restrictions on things. Petrol was an absolute premium. Nobody really had a car or could drive anywhere because you couldn't buy any petrol.
And what was Poppy Jack's role up there?
He was a clerk in the army. He didn't get involved in the fighting or anything like that. He was some sort of a clerical job that he had in the army. He didn't like the army at all. It was very contrary to his outlook and attitude and what have you. But he made a lot of good friends there, and later in life I sort of met quite a few of them. It brings up another couple of things, like there was a good mate of Dad's, his name was Pop, for whatever it was called Pop, I don't know, but his name was Pop Fellows. Lived in Sydney. Dad kept in touch with him. Whenever Pop came to Brisbane, he'd stay at our place, and if his family came, they'd stay at our place, which is why I didn't see my bedroom too much, because there was a lot of people coming and going. But one of the interesting things was that 2 of Pop's sons, Ernie and Billy, Ernie was a horse trainer and Billy was a jockey, and they had stables at Pop's place at the back of the house there where he lived at Warwick Farm. A horse trained by Ernie by the name of Fox Army and ridden by Billy won the 1948 Melbourne Cup. And I graphically remember it because I don't know how I got the day off school, but Mum and I were in town walking around in CBD of Brisbane, in Queen Street as you do, and we were in a shop called Penny's, which is, you know, an old throwback from a long way, who fortunately happened to have a radio going in the store, broadcast the Melbourne Cup. So here's Mum and I standing in the middle of Penny's store in Queen Street, jumping up and down, screaming, "Come on, Billy, come on, Billy," you know. And yeah, they won the Melbourne Cup, so that was a bit of a buzz, and something I've never forgotten. I never spent a lot of time in my bedroom in the Dobson Street house because we always were inundated with other family people and friends and what have you that Mum and Dad had. And, I made a few notes there, like my father had 3 brothers, and my mother came from a family of 11, 7 of them sisters. So I had aunts and uncles all over the countryside, and that sort of was a platform for me as a child to go to a lot of places for school holidays, because we had aunts and uncles scattered around the countryside who they could palm me off to various school holidays. One of my holiday trips was to Cunnamulla, because you went by train, which you had to go to Charlotte and then swap trains and get this 2-hour or 4-hour trip to Cunnamulla by train, what have you. And stayed with my aunt and uncle and the cousins. And again, did a lot of social activities with the cousins in a country town and picked up a lot of information and knowledge and what have you of how people in the country lived and thought and what have you. I can really remember a campfire. We used to go out in the bush and have a campfire and a barbecue and that sort of thing. And at that stage, they had heard of this guy but never saw him or knew anything much about him. It was some bloke called Elvis. And I got up at the barbecue and did a rendition of Heartbreak Hotel in Elvis fashion for them. They thought it was great. I remember that now. Yeah. Okay. So when it came time to come home, we had torrential rain. This would have been, pretty certain would have been maybe not August school holidays, but earlier school holidays. And the train lines were all underwater and the roads were underwater and everything was impassable. And the only way I could get home was by plane. So after frantic phone calls on the party line at Cunnamulla, as you do, or put all the money in the A and B slots and what have you on the local phone, because nobody had telephones in those days. The only way to get me home was to fly. So I rolled up at Cunnamulla Airport and got on board a DC-3 and flew home on a DC-3. And just imagine flying at that stage. I'd never been up in the air before or what to expect or anything like that. And of course, in those days, the air pressure was dreadful. I think coming to land, you thought your head was going to explode. But yeah, and that was something that gave you some pretty good brownie points with everyone you met. Having been up in a DC-3, which wasn't the done thing in those days, but it was the only way I could have got home for at least a week or so. I would have been stranded in Cunnamulla for God knows how long. Dad was fairly keen for me to follow on and get involved in horse racing, and I didn't really cotton to horse racing very much. I'd found cars, and I was obsessed by cars in those days. But I went to the races quite a few times and assisted the bookie with paying out money and all the rest of it. And so Dad finally said, "Well, you're not real comfortable doing this." And I said, "No, not really, Dad." He said, "Okay, just give it this." So I sort of dropped out of the horse racing scene and fraternity, but still kept all the family and friends and what have you, but just didn't want to go to the track and be responsible for big handfuls of money. One of Mum's sisters, Auntie Murray, lived at a place called Crib Island, which is no longer there. The airport took it over and just demolished it. But it was viewed as one of the sort of low socio-economic parts of town. These Jackson's estate at Crib Island, people lived in fairly, not shanties, but they weren't real flash housing. But I'd ride my push bike down to see my cousins at Crib Island. Fortunately, there weren't too many hills on the way. They're pretty flat through Nudgee and those places like that. But yeah, that was a Sunday afternoon's travel to go down and see someone. And they were into fishing, and the most prosperous, I guess, local industry was worming. No, they used to dig worms. Crib Island worms were famous all over the place as the only thing to use if you wanted to catch fish. And they had, there would have been 8 or 10 families down there that all they did every day was dig up worms out of the mud and sell them. And I used to get a few for free and go fishing for free. But I fished the Brisbane River. I caught a lot of fish in the Brisbane River in those days before it was grossly overused and heavily polluted and what have you. You could always go down and catch whiting, a few flathead. You learn a technique that will let you catch mullet, which was unheard of. People say you couldn't catch mullet, and you really couldn't catch mullet on a baited hook, but you could catch them on a 3-prong sort of hook sort of thing and jag them. And the fish that we caught the most of were gar. And there was very, very good fishing there for gar. And again, they required a very delicate technique because they had a very small mouth and used a little tiny hook and threw a bit of old bread in the water and attracted them all around. And you could catch 6 or 7 gar in no time. I used to frequent it even after school. I'd get home from school and throw my bag in and jump on the bike and race down to the river to have a fish. Bring some fish home for Mum for dinner. Then go and do my homework. But anyway. So yeah, it was a lot of activity there as a kid. Oh, I guess when I was about 10 or 12, started reading about all the famous overseas drivers and what have you, and keeping up with finding there was a few magazines around that covered some of the car racing and what have you. Blossomed when I started work. Started my apprenticeship as a motor mechanic after I left school, and there was quite a few people that I worked with who were into car racing in various forms of it, and I got involved with them, and that just gave me a bigger entree into local motor racing and what have you. I used to ride my push bike from Ascot to Strathpine because there was a motor racing track at Strathpine. It used to be called Spitfire Drive, which was a World War II airfield in the middle of Strathpine, and that airstrip was there, and they used to just put a couple of rows of drums or K bales or something at either end of it, so you had somewhere to turn around, and they had car racing in Strathpine, and I used to ride out there on a Saturday afternoon to see the motor racing. There were a few people that I worked with got involved and started involving themselves in getting cars, and I started working on a few people's motor racing cars. Dad had quite a few contacts around the place, and when I decided I'd like to go for a motor mechanics apprenticeship, he knew quite a few people from his contacts in football and the pub and racing and all the rest of it, who had other contacts and what have you. And he got me an interview with the service manager of Eagers at Newstead. I went into Eagers and had an interview there and got the job and started as an apprentice at Eagers Newstead workshop, and I just loved it. Just loved being there involved with cars and learning it, and used to have to go to college 1 or 2 nights a week, I can't really remember, but it was at least 1 night a week, and the college was down at the Gardens. So it was a tram ride into the city and then walk from Queen Street down to the Gardens, which was no mean feat, and then do a couple of hours of study and what have you in college, in the classroom. They also had a workshop there where you go in and do practical things. And as best I could remember, my first car was a 1929 Whippet utility with a canopy over the back. And I was absolutely king of the kids driving around the street in this Whippet utility. Of course, I couldn't help myself. I made quite a few modifications to it. I put special shock absorbers on it and a Holden carburetor and really made it go good and be a bit more economical than it used to be. And of course then I was very popular with my mates because we could take 4 or 5 of our mates down to the Gold Coast. And the big deal in those days was that you went down to Southport on a Sunday in the Whippet and went swimming and surfing and sunning on the beach and all those sort of things, and could drive home Sunday afternoon. It was about a 2-hour drive in those days. The road wasn't real flash. And then I finally got, it was a big old heavy hulking thing, really. And I sold that and bought a 1949 Hillman Mix. True, yeah, bought a Hillman Mix. It was a nice little car, it had seen better days, but I spent a lot of time and did it up, reconditioned the motor, stripped it right back and had it repainted, got the front seats reupholstered, and it had a sunroof. Like in those days, boy oh boy, a sunroof, it's great. And again, you know, you'd always have 2 or 3 hangers on mates that'd say, come on, let's go down, and we'd go down, even went as far as Tweed Heads one day, in our Hillman Mix. Yeah, I had it for a couple of years actually, drove it all over the place in the countryside. It was handy being able to do all the work on it yourself as an apprentice. Yeah, so that was where I went with. I'm trying to remember what I bought after the Hilton Minx. I drew an absolute blank. I can't remember what I bought.
When did you decide that racing cars was going to be a thing?
Oh, that was right back when I was 14 or 15 and what have you. And then when I started my apprenticeship and came into contact with these people who were actually racing, and you know, they were racing some pretty rudimentary sort of things at the time. And then one guy I was working with, like called Max Volkers, he left Eagers and went over to the service station, the one you used to work at Aspley, and he started racing a Holden, and I got involved with him and a few other guys in the heyday of hotting up Holdens and racing them. The local Aspley chemist was a bloke named Roy Sawyer, and he wanted to go motor racing and didn't have the foggiest clue about it. He couldn't even drive the thing, let alone do it. So I started being his mechanic and then got his Holden going and what have you. And fortunately he had the money to spend on it to make it go. And I just did all the work on it. And it took a lot of weekends and nights and what have you that got the thing going and take it to the race meeting and say, well, there it is, Roy, away you go. And he couldn't drive shit through a pen, he was terrible. Racing at the old Strathpine airstrip was pretty basic. It was just sort of basically up and down with a big loopy turn at one end, but it was still good, you know, a lot of competition or what have you. And Roy enjoyed his races in his FJ Holden, but you know, he just didn't have the wherewithal. So he finally said, well, the last race of the day, the car's still going, have a drive. So I hopped in and had a drive. And I was very, very fortunate that it was a handicap event, and I was racing off Roy's practice time handicaps, which was a good asset. So, as it mentioned, I finally managed to get home first in my first ever motor race in someone else's car for the day. So that was a bit of a buzz, but it just sort of made me feel a lot more involved in motorsport than I was, and I got sort of deeper and deeper with various teams, and over many, many years worked with a lot of motor racing teams, and it was very easy to go to the Speedway. Every Saturday night during the summer there was the Speedway on at the exhibition showgrounds, and there was all forms of motorbikes and cars and what have you, and then they eventually introduced stock cars, which were sedans that can bash and crash and what have you. So I used to get the train into the valley and go to the exhibition from there. At the end of the night the train didn't suit, so I used to have a fairly substantial walk back down to Newstead almost to get the tram home. But in those days you just walked and that was it. You know, you could go anywhere around the city as long as you walked. But because the exhibition speedway was really something. I just enjoyed hanging over the fence and cheering on the champions as they were. After the race was over, it was a great scramble because every lap they come out, they used to have to tear off a pair of goggles because all the dirt and muck on them. So the big thing was to how many pairs of goggles you could go home with that night as to how well you enjoyed the racing. To play the record you needed a little steel needle, and you could only get 1 or 2 plays out of a record, but I just loved my music, and I had, I don't know how I ever come by the thing or the records, but I had Tex Morton and Shirley Toms and Smokey Dawson and all those sort of things, music, which sort of then led me to when I used to go to college, and they used to have these concerts on at City Hall. They used to start in the City Hall at 8 o'clock. And I used to finish my class down at the gardens at 8 o'clock. And I can remember on many occasions running the full length of George Street with a blooming bag full of textbooks and what have you to go to one of these concerts in City Hall because there was live music. And they were just amazing, yeah. Yeah, they were a great occasion. And they usually only one night only. And of course City Hall doesn't hold that many people. But then, I can't think when it all happened, but the old stadium building was then converted when they started to import a lot of overseas acts, and they used to put on concerts at the old stadium. And I went to quite a few of those, saved up all my money and let myself broke going to these women shows. I'm just trying to think of something here. They were way back, but then came through the era of rock and roll.
Yep.
It started, believe it or not, because of a movie called Blackboard Jungle. And it was a sort of story about rebellious high school kids and all the rest of it. And that was a bit of a nothing movie. But the thing that came out of it that's turned the world upside down was this group that sang Rock Around the Clock, Bill Haley and the Comets. And it became the icon of the current generation music. You know, everyone sang and yelled and danced to Rock Around the Clock. And it just ballooned into so many other artists. And I saw quite a lot of them at the old stadium, the likes of Gene Vincent. I actually saw Bill Haley on stage at the rock and roll. Little Richard, who was an icon in his day. Quite a few more if I sat down and thought about it, but they had all these concerts on at the old stadium, which wasn't a very good venue sound-wise or any, you know, spectator-wise, but it was the only thing, and it was better than what we used to have, which was nothing. And they eventually knocked the old stadium down and built Festival Hall. And then again, over the years, I just chasing music that I loved so much, I went to Festival Hall and saw the likes of Louis Armstrong on stage, Gene Krupa, the drummer. I'd have to sit and think about a few others, but there was a chain of all these artists that came to Australia and finished up at Festival Hall. Yeah, so we, well, and even, you know, for many years, whenever they came, we would go to concerts at Festival Hall to get the latest in music. I clearly still remember the Creedence Clearwater concert. It was just amazing. To hear live the voice of John Fogerty was just amazing. He had a unique sound. Yeah, but that's a bit out of context and what have you, but that's where all the music came from. There would always be somebody around the district somewhere, once a fortnight, 3 weeks, that would put on a party. And you'd go to a party and you'd meet a few friends and what have you, and you might meet some girl that you chatted to, and you'd take her to the movies the next week. And that was it, you know, and get to the front gate and say, thanks for coming to the movies with me, see you later. I guess it was more an economic thing more than anything. But speaking of that, I still recall when they knocked the stadium down and they hadn't built the Festival Hall, they really didn't have a venue. So the old Cloudland Ballroom, which was up on the hill there at Newstead, they put on a concert, and they had, believe it or not, Buddy Holly, Jerry Lee Lewis and Paul Anka on stage in Cloudland. And I was there. I'd saved my money and skimped and saved and what have you to get to see them. And I can't think, but I vaguely took some girl that I knew at the time to go along and say, well, you know, she was into music like me, and we went and saw them all together. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, there was no really formal romantic dating or what have you. It was just, you know, someone to be nice with. Yeah. And someone to talk to at a party. There was a girl that I'd gone to school with and knew pretty well and kept in the social group with called Denise Coleman. And I met your mother at a party at Denise Coleman's place. And because your mother liked the music and what have you, and we went to a couple of music shows. But there was nothing serious there for ages and ages, you know. But we used to bump into each other here and there around Ascot, as you did, at somebody else's party. It was always, and the parties were very low-key sort of things. They weren't boisterous, or it was just people sat around and there was virtually never any grog in them. You know, have a cup of tea. But yeah, it was a social occasion because, you know, without if you really wanted to do something with some girl, you'd go to the movies. And that was a fairly cheap night out. Sometimes they'd even pay their own way. But that was acceptable. That's the way things were done. And I really racked my brains about how your mother and I got together, and I don't really recall how it all started, but it was ages and ages and ages from when we first met that we sort of went out consistently together. Yeah. She had an elder sister, she had a younger sister, and she had a younger brother. I wouldn't say exactly, but I'd say Cora was very ashamed of her mother. She really was. She never really wanted you to come round to her place. You say, you know, well, I go, oh, I'll meet you down at the corner. She really steered you clear of the place, mainly because of her mother and the current boyfriend. And it was a shame, you know, because Cora was such a nice person. Did my scholarship at Villanova College at Whinestanes. I did sub-junior at Villanova College, Whinestanes. They elected to close Whinstanes down, the Augustinian fathers, and reopen their super new college at Cooperoo, sitting up on top of the hill at Cooperoo. And there was a great debate in the family as to whether or not I went there or changed schools. At the time, things weren't going really well financially at home. A few things. Dad had a really bad trot of the horses and what have you. The bookmaking money was pretty tight, as I could understand. So I made the decision, for right or wrong, to carry on at Villanova, because changing schools would have meant a lot more fees. If I had gone to the St Columban's or Gregory Terrace or something, it would have meant buying a whole lot of new uniforms, maybe a whole new lot of textbooks, etc, etc, etc. And I really didn't think that the family could afford it. So I elected to stay with Villanova, which was okay. But looking back, I don't know, never know. But I used to have to leave home about 7 o'clock in the morning, walk down to the end of the Dobson Street to Nudgee Road, catch a bus down there, Nudgee Road, which took me into the valley, dropped me off at the corner in the valley. I then walked up to the old TC Burney store and caught a trolley bus in those days, which was an electric trolley bus. Got the trolley bus across the Story Bridge to the Wollongabba Fiveways, got off the trolley bus there, then got a tram to Cooperoo, which then dropped me quite close to Villanova College. So it was a fairly long day of travel, and then of course the same thing coming home. I never got to do senior. Right? Like junior was where I got to, and I passed my junior, not with a great deal of comfort, but I did pass junior. But financially, the family just couldn't keep sending me to Cooperoo and couldn't keep funding me to go through senior, which was a pretty heavy thing with a lot of textbooks and God knows what all. And I really think that they needed me out there producing some income, because I used to pay, I don't know, £2.10 or something a week to mum for board and what have you, but they relied on me bringing in some income rather than having that going out. So, you know, I didn't feel disadvantaged by not doing my senior, because to me I'd done the best I could, and from there I got a job in an industry that I loved and had plenty of time to football, tennis, cricket, movies and all the rest of it, which I probably wouldn't have had the freedom to do that had I been studying the senior. And I've never ever had any regrets by not doing senior, but I really think that I'd be far better off if I could make sure that my kids got through to senior. Because by that stage, there was no kudos in having passed your junior, right? Any mug can pass junior. If you're going to go anywhere in this world, you've got to have senior. And And that was the mentality that existed at that stage. So it was all hands to the pumps that make sure the kids could do senior. Of course, Jim just turned her nose up at it and said, no, thank you. Which is fair enough, yeah. I said, well, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. That's your choice.
That's good. Yeah.
I was looking after a Mini Cooper for him. His name was Bill Cunliffe. He was a multi-restaurateur around the town, and he had a place called the Tower Lodge Motel over at Annerley. And they had very big wedding receptions and birthday parties and that there. And he was bemoaning the fact that he could never get staff and waiters and all the rest of it. So I used to go over there on a Saturday and work from 10 o'clock till 10 o'clock for 10 bob an hour. Because I think in those days mechanics' wages weren't all that flash. They were adequate, but you didn't have anything spared. I guess with a couple of cars in the family to keep and where we were and what have you, I was always on the lookout for some extra money. I was always working on people's cars to get a few extra dollars. Worked for Bill Cunliffe at his motel, but you know, that was big money, 10 bob an hour, my God, you know, you were made. But yeah, and then one of the better known disc jockeys in the town, a bloke by the name of Bill Gates, was a motor racing freak. He used to race a TR2 when I worked for Jimmy Bertram. We used to get a service there and tuned there and all the rest of it, and Jimmy used to look after it. And Bill, in those days, at a place called the O'Connor Boathouse on the main reach of the Brisbane River, every Wednesday night ran a record hop. And all these kids used to come in and he'd play all the latest records and what have you, and they'd dance their feet off and what have you. And he gave me a job there serving the Coca-Cola. And that was another good money spinner. So, you know, I had all these peripheral sources of income to supplement so that we could go to Cotton Tree. Yeah, true. You know? Yeah. Like a holiday at Cotton Tree was fairly expensive because you had to rent a place and they used to charge you exorbitant rates because it was Christmas time or Easter or whatever it was. So yeah, all the extra money that I earned, if we didn't spend it, we sort of accumulated it so we could have a good holiday with the kids at Cotton Tree for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think I was sales manager for South Queensland at Castrol, and somewhere along the line we needed a new secretary, so they put the usual ad in the paper and what have you. Got a whole heap of replies. I went through them all, and myself and another guy trimmed it down to about 4 people. So he said to me, well, you know, I'm happy with any one of those 4, what about you? And I read them all, I said, yeah, any one of those 4 would be fine. And so he said, well, we better make a decision on which one to go. I said, well, we'll go this one first, this one second, third, fourth. And he said, why? I said, well, this lady here has currently got a fairly good paying job, which was Dorothy. The other 2 girls were trying to get into the business and get a job and what have you. So I rang the first one up, and she basically said, no, I've changed my mind, I don't want the job. Okay, so I rang up candidate number 2. Oh, no, my husband said it's too far to travel, blah, blah, blah. So I rang Dorothy and she said, yeah, I'll take the job. So she came along, and I think she stayed 12 or 18 months or something at the job. And she said, oh, there's not enough variation, it's too boring, I'm going somewhere else. So that was the staying end of it. She left. I didn't see her then for another 3, 4 years maybe. She was absolutely top class.
Yeah.
And you know, I guess I was devastated when she said she was leaving to get a better job. But nothing you could do about it. So I just said, well, I wish you well, and you know, keep in touch, which she never ever did. Until, that's why Castrol used to have a Christmas party over in the production area. They used to clean it all out, dress it up. and they used to have a Christmas party for the staff and past staff. And I can't even think of the year now. But anyway, I was at the staff party and Dorothy was there. And, oh, nice to see you, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? Oh, she said, I'm doing this, that, and the other. All right. She said, I'm in the throes of leaving my husband. I said, oh, and she do. So, yeah, we went from there.
Yeah.
Something that we've been very fortunate for is Dorothy and I have been able to see quite a bit of the world. We've done some really wonderful trips to places that we'll always remember with a great deal of affection, particularly places like Antarctica, Vietnam, Norway, just to name a few. Had a wonderful trip through Africa. Found Ceylon here I go, Sri Lanka as it's now known as. It's a very charming place. The people there are really wonderful. When we've seen a huge amount of Australia. We're very fortunate with our caravan that we've travelled far and wide and taken in so many places in Australia, so we have a good understanding of Australia as a whole country. And we've just recently done the Indian Pacific train trip from Sydney to Perth. Found that extremely good with a trip through Margaret River. But all of the states of Australia, the Northern Territory, we've spent an awful lot of time in them. Even spent time in Tasmania, not with the caravan, but we went down there and drove around Tasmania for a couple of weeks. Had a few trips to New Zealand, going back many years to visit an old uncle of Dorothy's who lived there. But yeah, we've really enjoyed travelling so many different places, met so many different people, made new friends, had an awful lot of experiences, I guess is the word. And yeah, we've enjoyed all of those occasions.
And I guess that was a huge challenge with Kim, who was absolutely bloody minded about what she wanted to do. And the best you could do was to give her as much support as you could, because she knew damn well that you weren't going to change her.
Yep.
She was that sort of a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of the difficulty, is it totally different to Judith. Totally. You know, just two entirely separate management structures.
Yeah.
Oh, God almighty.
Yeah.
But Judith was such a delight, you know. And Kim was just a gorgeous little kid. You know.
Yeah.
And I have one of my favourite images in my head of you with a little tiny port like this going off to get on the bus to go to school at Cairns.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
It's
a gorgeous little sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, oh, you would have been
5
at the most, I think.
Yeah.
And took to it like a duck to water.
Yeah.
Her name was Ethel. Her family came from Ipswich. As I said, she had 7 sisters and 3 brothers. But yeah, she was a really nice lady, my mum. I was very fortunate. She was a good lady. She worked very hard in those days. She hand washed everything. Cooked on an old gas stove. Had a pretty ordinary fridge. But yeah, she taught me a lot. Gave me a lot of standards. She had a stroke in 1954. I remember that because that was when the Queen first visited Australia, and she couldn't. We had to walk down to the end of Dobson Street because the Queen came past in Nudgee Road from the airport. They went away to the Queen. But Mum was too ill, or either home or hospital, I just can't remember which. And she took a long time to recover from her stroke. She never really got over it completely, but she was a little bit handicapped with one side, the left side I think it was from memory. She walked with a distinct limp. but she still worked hard and did everything as though nothing was wrong with her. And then in 1958 she had another fairly massive stroke, which eventually, after 2 months in hospital, killed her. And quite a number of her siblings suffered the same problem. They suffered from cerebral aneurysms. One of the first one to die was one of her brothers, who was a coal miner in Ipswich, and they all claimed when he died that he'd had a hemorrhage and what have you, and they claimed he must have hit his head in the mine or something fell on his head and what have you. But with hindsight, I think he just had the same cerebral hemorrhage that Mum had, Sister Doreen had, Sister Gertrude had, eventually a Sister Vera had, and I really think that that was because of their lifestyle. I know Mum smoked fairly heavily, tailor-made cigarettes. She didn't drink all that heavily, but she had you know, a fair bit of stress in her life, I guess. And I think the same with all of the siblings. You know, they all drank and smoked and took copious quantities of Beck's powders, which I really don't think were very good for them, but they all did it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and that's why I guess I've never smoked, never ever smoked a cigarette in my life. Extremely moderate drinker. I could never stand the taste of beer, and all my mates were, you know, getting sloshed on beer. I used to sit back and drink lemonade or something because I just couldn't stand the taste of lemonade, and I didn't want to drink because I had this fear that I could inherit my mother's problem. I didn't want that at all. So far I've been lucky.
Yeah.
I never knew my grandmother. She died before I was born. My grandfather, I can vaguely remember him sitting up in a chair all covered in rugs and what have you, and he suffered from a heart condition and he died when I was very, very young, as far as I can remember.
So, Poppy Jack's father? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a horse trainer.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. He had huge big stables up the top end of Dobson Street. My uncle Les, who I was named after, he also had a heart condition. He didn't do army service because he had a heart condition, and I would have been about 15 or 16 or 17 when he died also from a heart condition. I believe he had a faulty valve, or not a tremor, but some sort of heart condition that made him unsuitable for active service, and eventually got him. As best I can find out, it was built in about 1928 or 20 something, around about 1930. Mum and Dad bought it. The Gould family lived in this street. My grandfather had stables up the top end of the street. He was the leading Queensland horse trainer. A few streets up there on the left was where my uncle Colin lived, Dad's brother Colin. 2 streets away, Dad's other brother, whose name, strange enough, was Les, lived around there. And Dad's other brother, Harold, lived over at Hendra. But again, you know, absolutely surrounded by horse racing. The reason for it was, in those days there was no such thing as horse floats. They used to walk the horses to Doomben or to Eagle Farm. So they had to live close or train close to the race courses. So now it was a complete horse racing environment here.
Yeah.
So here we are at Landsborough Avenue at Boondall, the first home. I bought this block of land, what was then called the Jacaranda Estate, for about, I think, £700. I think from memory I'd saved it up and paid it off, or bought it outright, I can't remember which, but didn't do much for it until we were looking at what to do, and got a couple of relatives, and so as to speak, a bloke called Matt Darbenezer and John McFarlane, who were builders and were married to my cousins on the Barber side of the family, and they built this house for us. Okay, we shifted into this house when it was finished being built in 1964. 3 bedrooms. We had Judy at the time, and I think we brought Kim home from hospital to this house.
which was a great occasion for us all. It was a very nice, comfortable house. We really enjoyed it. Had a huge, big lounge room, fairly small dining room, very basic kitchen, but we loved it.
From the kitchen with there?
We were a bit sneaky because across the road from here was one of the very original drive-in movie theatres, and we could stand at our kitchen window and look out and see the great big screen and see what was going on. I guess that might have given us a few lessons in lip reading, but we enjoyed watching the movies for free. Or if we wanted to walk across the road with a blanket and sit down in the car park, it was fine. I was very fortunate in those days. There was an awful lot of work around for after-hours mechanics, and I managed to get a friend of mine to help me concrete underneath the house, put a couple of car tracks in so I could get in and out, and I spent many, many hours under the house there working on people's cars, which were really good cash-in-hand jobs at the time, which were great, and it helped the family no end. So yeah, it did an awful lot for us, and we were very happy and comfortable here. But as the family grew, we found that it was a little bit awkward for the room that we had, so we went looking elsewhere and made the decision to go to the 4-bedroom home at Zilmere, which, with the benefit of hindsight, was not a good decision. Actually, one of the things you'd have to take your hat off to was that back in those early days, Coral was home with 2 littlies in a stroller. This was a dirt road with big rocks and gibbers and what have you. The nearest shop to buy things at was at least 2 k's down that road, and she used to push the 2 kids in the stroller down to the shop, buy what we needed and bring them home. And you'd have to take your hat off to a lady for doing that. You wouldn't find it happening today. Number 10 Ewing Street at Zilmere. When we found that we'd outgrown our original home at Boondall, we looked around somewhere close by for a 4-bedroom home, and we finished up here. Fairly unique sort of a place. Had a huge aquarium in the stairwell, but there only was one stairwell, one way in and out, so we finally decided that that was not good practice. It was quite an unusual house. We had rooms under the house as well. A flat roof, which was very, very unusual for that era. A very minuscule backyard, which our dog Sarah managed to tear to shreds on a regular basis. So anyway, having decided that this was totally unsuitable for our family, we moved on and wound up in our Ellardale Street at Aspley, and we were much better off there.
You might want to say, and it doesn't look like anything's been done to it since.
Well, yes, it's pretty derelict, and it never looked this shabby ever, except now. Across the road from us here at number 10, there's obviously several flats and units and what have you across, right up the street as far as we can see. When we were here, that was a 10-acre paddock covered in long grass, a bit of swampy ground and what have you, and occasionally it was let out for adjustments for horses and cows. This is 28 Ellardale Street, Aspley. We arrived here in about 1978, simply because the house that we moved to in Zilmere only had one entry and exit, and we were a little bit concerned about a fire hazard, so we looked for a place that had front and back steps and lived in a suburb other than Zilmere. So we finally found this place here because it gave us a continuation of the kids going to school, still staying with most of their friends locally and what have you, and it filled the bill because it had front and back steps. Halcyon Parks in Caloundra, which is a over 55s village, mainly filled with retired people, but suits our lifestyle. And we've been here since 2010. Took a bit of adapting to get used to the place, particularly after leaving the Narangba home, which was fairly big and spacious with grounds and everything else that went with it. But anyway, we're here for better or worse now, and we sort of make the most of it. I
guess you weigh up the things that are important, and head and shoulders above everything else is family. Nothing really counts as much as family, whether the size of the house or the car or the bank account or whatever else. It all pales into insignificance compared to how important your family is to you. And then it's then the flow on. It's the family of the family of the family, right? And at this stage, you know, when we're now talking great grandchildren, that sort of brings it home to you. Like when I look and see these guys, you know, no, they're just amazing people. To me, they're just amazing people with the intelligence and the knowledge and the aptitudes that they've got, that they've acquired in such a short lifetime. Which, you know, I think of the knowledge and the aptitudes that I acquired through school and apprenticeship and working for Castrol and what have you. But it's a very slow process by comparison to what the current kids go through, you know. And I guess it brings home the responsibility you have to nurture that.